You always overreact, Elise. It's just money. That's what my brother said when I asked why Mom used my name to take out loans, without ever telling me. He said it like I was being dramatic, like I didn't cover their bills for 6 years, like losing my home to a fire wasn't enough. But what burned more than the house was the silence that followed. No apologies, no explanations, just a string of missed calls, 69 of them, after I finally walked away. If you've ever been the fixer in your family, the quiet one who always shows up until you don't, leave a 1 in the comments. And if you've never been in that role, count your blessings and drop a 0 because sometimes it's not the fire that breaks you. It's realizing no one ever meant to put it out. Sometimes the ones who hold the matches swear they're keeping you warm. That winter, I learned otherwise. The walls of Noah's basement had that faint cold dampness that reminded me of childhood winters, when the furnace struggled and we'd crowd around the space heater, pretending it was enough. Back then, I thought huddling close was love. Now, the silence around me screamed otherwise. I checked my banking app again, even though I already knew what I'd see. My balance was near 0. Camilla had emptied the joint account, again. No text, no warning, just gone. 6 years of helping out had turned into routine withdrawals. Somewhere along the line, my salary had stopped being mine. The fire took my house 3 weeks ago. An electrical short, they said. Insurance still hadn't come through. I'd been staying in Noah's basement since. He'd offered without hesitation, even cleared space on his laundry table so I could fold my few saved clothes. There was kindness in that. Quiet, real kindness. I tapped back into the voicemail app. Camilla's voice greeted me with a syrupy edge. "You'll bounce back. You always do." Like it was a cheer or a challenge. I couldn't decide which. Either way, it left a bitter taste. On a low shelf behind Noah's futon, I found an old shoebox I hadn't seen since I moved out of my first apartment. Inside, a graduation card from Camilla. Flowery script. "So proud of the woman you're becoming." I ran my thumb along the embossed edges. The words felt like a dare now, like she'd set an expectation I was meant to bleed for. Noah came downstairs with a mug of tea. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Fine." He hesitated, then sat beside me. "You don't have to keep giving until there's nothing left. You know that, right?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I did know that. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling pipes ticked with temperature shifts. My breath fogged a little when I exhaled. I pulled out an old memory like a threadbare blanket. Sunday evenings curled up on the rug while Grandpa Howard read the paper, Camilla knitting, and the television softly humming through another episode of 60 Minutes. Mira would lay across my legs. Reed would barely look up from his crossword. We looked like a family. That illusion used to comfort me. Now it mocked me. Grandpa Howard once gave me my first checkbook with a wink. Money isn't just numbers, Elise. It's a power people pretend not to see. I hadn't understood then, but I did now. I saw exactly how my help had been used as quiet control. I was the safety net, the invisible backbone. And somehow, I was the villain when I needed something in return. Brady hadn't called. He rarely did. Mira had texted a meme the day after the fire. No question about where I was staying, no offer of help. Just a gif of a flaming dumpster and 2023 vibes. Then came the family group call. Camilla laughed after a pause in the conversation. "Well, if Elise needs a place, there's always the shelter downtown." Chuckles echoed from the others. I waited for someone, anyone, to say, "That's not funny." But no one did. Not Reed, not Mira, not Brady. I stared at the screen. Their faces smiled. My stomach curled. I ended the call early, claiming a bad signal. Then I sat in Noah's laundry chair for another hour, just listening to the humming furnace. In that moment, I realized something that scared me more than losing my house. I missed people who never really saw me. I grieved a version of family that had only ever existed in my hopes. A sharp wind howled outside, rattling the tiny window well. I grabbed a blanket off the cot and curled in tighter. Above me, I could hear the faint creak of Noah's footsteps in the kitchen. His quiet, consistent presence, a contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. On the table near the cot sat a chipped coffee mug filled with pens, one of them bearing a faded bank logo. I picked it up, spinning it slowly in my fingers. Another relic of control, maybe. Or maybe just a pen. That night, I opened the group chat, stared at the endless scroll of birthdays, memes, reminders, and deleted it. Just like that. Gone. That night, I deleted the family group chat, and no one even noticed. When you're the family's safety net, no one checks if you're fraying. The bookstore smelled like dust and lavender, a combination I didn't expect to find comforting, but there was something reassuring about it, like old stories refusing to disappear. I ran my fingers along the spines of hardcovers, stopping when I reached a slim volume titled The Cost of Staying Silent. It felt too familiar. I shelved it slowly, my thumb lingering on the cover longer than necessary. Noah appeared a moment later, carrying 2 steaming paper cups. "Chamomile?" he said, offering one to me. "Figured you could use less caffeine today." We settled into the reading nook tucked between the memoirs and history section. The cushions were mismatched, the lamp too dim, but it was a quiet kind of haven. Outside, snow tapped softly at the window. "Have you ever thought about working somewhere quieter?" he asked, nudging his boot against mine. "The library's hiring. Less chaos. Better pay." I sipped the tea. I'm not sure I remember how to do something just for myself. He didn't push, just gave a soft and leaned back. That was the thing about Noah. He never demanded anything I wasn't ready to give. Our takeout sat between us, turkey sandwiches and coffee in wax paper bags. I'd barely touched mine. My appetite hasn't returned since the fire, but I didn't want to say that out loud. Instead, I picked at the crust, while Noah flipped through an old poetry anthology. The bell at the front chimed, and Mrs. Keeley shuffled in, her scarf half unraveled and snow caught in the folds of her coat. "You girls are getting younger and younger," she said, winking at Noah. "I work weekends," I told her, grinning. "Let me know if you need help finding anything." "I'm looking for a book. Letters to my daughter. My granddaughter mentioned it, and I figured it's time I read it." We walked through the aisles together until I spotted it. As she took the book in hand, she said, "My daughter moved out west. Doesn't call much anymore, but I still think of her every morning when I make coffee. We love the ones who leave too much of us behind." The words pierced something in me. We sat down in the reading nook and flipped through the pages together. She asked if I would read aloud. One letter read, "I hope you never forget how you once clutched my hand in the dark, not because you were afraid, but because you trusted I'd lead you forward." I blinked fast. Mrs. Keeley reached over, patted my knee gently. "It's okay to miss the people who forget how much you gave them." I helped her to the checkout. As she fumbled for her wallet, I said, "It's on me today." She looked at me carefully, like she knew something I hadn't said. Back at the front counter, I opened the store email to log returns, but my eyes snagged on something else. Final notice, tuition delinquency, Mira's school. My name, was listed as backup guarantor. Camilla had used me again. My chest tightened. I fumbled for my phone and dialed Mira. Hey, she answered, voice flat. I just got a notice. You didn't tell me I was listed for tuition. A pause. Oh, yeah. Mom thought you wouldn't mind. I do mind, Mira, she sighed. You always fix things, Elise. Isn't that what you're good at? Have you ever realized you were only loved for what you could provide? Not for who you are, but for how well you patched others up. If that pain rings true for you, leave a comment number 7 below. Let's see how I finally chose myself. I remembered tying her shoelaces when she was 5, cutting the crusts off her sandwiches, helping Brady finish his science project in middle school because he forgot the deadline. I was always patching, fixing, smoothing. Once, when Mira tore her winter coat sleeve on the chain-link fence, I stayed up until midnight, sewing it back with a mismatched thread. She never thanked me, just wore it the next morning like it had always been whole. Now, Mira's voice was colder than that coat had ever been. The call ended shortly after. I stared at the bookshelf, heart hammering. I found Noah again and sat down hard beside him. I didn't explain, just held the tea to my chest like it could thaw what had frozen inside me. Later that evening, before closing, I typed out a message. Remove my name from everything, starting today. I hit send. Then, without flinching, I powered off my phone and slid it into the bottom drawer behind the register. I knew it wasn't over, but it was a start. The snow had stopped. The bookstore was quiet. For once, I let the silence stay. Families don't always shatter. Sometimes they rot slowly while smiling. The church pew creaked beneath me as I shifted, hands folded tight over the hymnal. The stained glass windows scattered color across the floor, fractured rainbows inching across the aisle like they were trying to escape. It was the first Sunday I'd come alone. No Camilla with her winter gloves and purse full of mints. No Reed with his slow, silent nods. No Mira tapping her phone under the bulletin. The pastor spoke of grace. Grace is not weakness. Grace is a boundary. It tells others where you end and they must begin. The words caught in my throat. I opened the small notebook I'd brought and scribbled it down. My fingers tremble slightly, not from the cold, but from something deeper, quieter, like shaking off decades of dust. The pew behind me coughed politely. I didn't turn. I needed this moment, mine alone. When the sermon ended, I walked out slower than usual. The cold air hit my lungs like the truth. On the steps, I pulled out my phone. A message from Brady blinked on the lock screen. Can you just smooth things over? Mom's not sleeping. I didn't open it, but I didn't delete it either. Instead of going straight home, or back to Noah's, I wandered down Main Street, boots crunching thin snow. The cafe on the corner still made the same cappuccino Camilla used to love. I stepped inside, ordered one before thinking. When they called my name, I hesitated. I took the cup anyway. The first sip was familiar. Too familiar. It wasn't mine. It was hers. A flavor I'd learned to like because I thought love was sacrifice. I sat near the window and pulled out my phone again. This time, I opened the voicemail. Camilla's voice was cracked and dramatic. After all I did for you, you treat me like a stranger? A long pause. Then a sniffle. You don't know how much this hurts. I closed my eyes. I knew. I knew exactly how much it hurt, because I'd been swallowing that same ache for years. Every time she'd praised me in public, but dismissed me in private. Every time she'd told friends, Elise is our rock, while draining me dry. I thought about calling back. My thumb hovered over her name. Instead, I opened a blank note on my phone and began to write. Camilla, I've been thinking about all the times you asked me to be understanding, to let things go, to be a bigger person. I did it so many times I forgot I had a size. I didn't finish it. I didn't send it. But it stayed in my drafts, a scar in digital ink. Later, Brady texted again. No words this time, just a photo. Our old living room. The brown leather sofa, the floral curtains, the crooked painting of Lake Michigan we never fixed. All gone, empty, gutted. They sold the house, he wrote. No one told you? The breath left my lungs like I'd been shoved. I blinked hard, but the image stayed. That room had held our Christmas mornings, our silent dinners, our arguments about college and curfews. Now it was just a hollow shell, and they'd erased me from the goodbye. I stared at the photo until my fingers went numb. I sat there for a long while, watching the street blur with passing cars and bundled-up couples. A father lifted his daughter onto his shoulders as they crossed the intersection, her laughter muffled by a pink scarf. That used to be Brady and me. He'd swing me around in the backyard, call me light as air. Now he texted me like a problem to manage, not a sister to miss. A gust of wind shook the cafe windows. I pulled my coat tighter and opened an old email thread, labeled Family Photos, the ones Camilla had curated every Christmas. She'd always insisted on coordinating outfits, down to the color of our socks, and yet the photos she posted online were carefully selected. Me in the back, blurry or mid-blink. Once, she'd deleted an entire set because she said, "You looked too tired, honey." But I remembered smiling. I'd finally looked like myself. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mira this time. Heard about the house. Weird, huh? No apology. No explanation. Just that casual tone she used when talking about reality TV spoilers. I didn't reply. The cappuccino was cold now. I took one last sip and pushed it aside. Before heading out, I walked past the bulletin board near the cafe restrooms. A flyer fluttered slightly at the edge. Support Group for Estranged Adult Children. Wednesdays, 6 p.m. I tore off the tab at the bottom without thinking. Not because I'd go. Just because it felt like claiming something. A label I hadn't given myself, but maybe fit better than any nickname Camilla ever used. Outside, the snow had picked up. I pulled my scarf over my mouth and whispered, "Silence can be sacred." Or a sentence. Grandpa Howard had said that to me once when I was 12, after I refused to tattle on Mira for stealing candy. Back then, it made me feel noble. Now, it felt like a warning. I reached Noah's steps and stood there a minute before going inside. My phone stayed in my pocket. I wouldn't listen to Camilla's message again, but I remembered every word. I hope you enjoy being alone, Elise. You're good at it. I thought cutting ties would give me peace, but silence has its own kind of noise. The first morning of January was eerily quiet. Outside my apartment in Eugene, Oregon, the sky hung gray and damp, as if the clouds had forgotten how to move. Across the street, my neighbor's Christmas lights still blinked, a late reminder of joy I hadn't felt in weeks. I sat at the kitchen table, holding my phone like it might explode. 69 missed calls. Camilla, Brady, Mira. No voicemails, no texts. Just silence that screamed louder than their accusations ever had. I didn't call back. I didn't even listen. I changed my number that afternoon and deleted every thread of theirs from my contacts. It was both liberating and suffocating. The first thing I did after was uninstall Facebook, then block every single family member on every platform I could remember. It wasn't anger. It was self-preservation. The kind that comes after the final straw has already snapped. That night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Wedged beneath expired coupons and broken pens was an old notebook, Mom's handwriting on the cover. For my little helper. Inside, pages of sticky notes and reminders. Don't forget to brush. Love you, Starshine. You're stronger than you think. I stared at them like they belonged to someone else. Someone she used to love. Noah showed up that Sunday afternoon without warning. He stood at my door holding 2 coffees and an envelope. Happy New Year, he offered, sheepish. I didn't ask for company. I brought caffeine. That counts for something. I let him in. He handed me the smaller cup, my usual, which he somehow remembered. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out 2 tickets. There's a photography exhibit at the Lane County Museum, he said. You should get out for an hour. I stared at him. What makes you think I want to see anything right now? You don't, he replied, but sometimes you should anyway. I didn't answer. I went to get my coat. At the museum, I wandered through hallways of quiet images, portraits from 1940s Oregon, farmhouses and barefoot children, church bells and frost-covered windows. One black and white photo showed a woman at a kitchen sink, looking out a window. The caption read, "She waited every morning. No one came." I kept staring at her long after Noah moved on. Back at the apartment, there was a small brown box outside my door. No return address, just my name in neat block letters. I knew that handwriting. Howard, my grandfather. Inside, his old pocket watch, silver, still ticking, and a folded sheet of paper. His handwriting trembled more now, but the message was clear. I should have seen it sooner. I'm sorry for not protecting you better. This watch kept me on time for 60 years. Maybe now it'll remind you, your time is still yours. I sat on the floor and wept, not because I missed them, but because someone had finally seen me. Later that week, I met Noah at the park. We sat on a wooden bench beneath bare branches, coffee warming our hands. I lost everything, I said quietly. He looked at me. I paid for Mira's tuition for 3 semesters, Brady's down payment, Mom's roof repair. I never asked for a dime back, but the moment I needed them, I shook my head. They made me feel like a beggar. He let the silence stretch. They knew you'd say yes, every time. I thought love meant showing up, being the one they could lean on. Maybe it does, but not if it crushes you in the process. Wind tugged at my scarf. I watched a child ride by on a red scooter, cheeks pink with cold. Howard's the only one who reached out, I whispered. Everyone else. They disappeared the moment I stopped paying. Noah nodded slowly, then looked at me, steady. If you had proof, real proof of what happened, would you use it? Sometimes the truth doesn't shout. It whispers from places no one thought to look. It started with a single phrase echoing in my mind. If you had proof. That question haunted me more than the silence that followed my family's absence. It was a Tuesday in mid-February, and the wind howled through the alleyways like it had something to say. I pulled my coat tighter as I entered the First Oregon Credit Union branch downtown. The cold followed me in, but so did the clarity. The inside of the bank smelled like old paper and coffee. It was one of the few buildings that hadn't been remodeled in decades. Frosted windows, linoleum floors, a flickering exit sign that had buzzed since I was a teen. I had walked these halls once, holding my mom's hand, learning what responsibility meant. Today, I was here to find where that responsibility had been twisted. Elise! The bank clerk looked up, squinting. Haven't seen you in ages. Hi, Tom. I'm here to request access to archived financial authorizations from 10 years ago, maybe more. He hesitated. We'll need ID and some waiting time. I've got both, I said, handing over my license. I took a seat, heart thudding. While Tom disappeared into the back, I scrolled through my phone. A new message from Camilla lit up the screen. I know I messed up. I just want my daughter back. Please. I stared at it. The words looked soft, but I knew how sharp they could cut. I didn't reply. Then another ping. Mira. I get why you're mad. I really do. Just don't forget we're sisters. She didn't get it. Or maybe she refused to. Sisterhood had limits, especially when one was treated like an ATM with legs. Tom returned with a folder, sliding it toward me. Inside were copies of authorizations I didn't remember signing, credit lines opened under my name, emergency loans following the house fire, insurance documents bearing my signature. But the handwriting wasn't mine. My breath caught when I saw the routing number. The payout, meant for me, had gone straight into Camilla's account. The silence in the bank suddenly had weight. I photocopied everything. My hands shook slightly as I pressed the buttons, like I was copying more than paper, copying years of betrayal into something tangible. When I stepped outside, snow had begun to fall. Large flakes melted against my coat, against the folder clutched to my chest. For the first time in months, I didn't feel buried by the cold. I felt clean. I remembered something strange then, back on the morning of my college entrance exam. Camilla had promised to drive me, even told me she had a surprise gift waiting if I did well. But that morning, she vanished. No call, no note. I took the bus, clutching my study notes in frozen fingers. The gift never came. And somehow, I still tried to win her approval. I met Noah that evening at the same bench in the park. He saw the folder and didn't ask. Just wait. She used my name, not once, not by accident. She stole from me. I opened the folder and handed him one of the copies. He read in silence, then gave it back. Don't go nuclear, go documented. Have you ever stood at the edge of revenge and chosen dignity instead? That moment when silence becomes power, not weakness. If you faced that choice, drop a comment number 9 below. Let's keep going. His words settled into me. Like the snow, soft but lasting. We sat there a while, watching the snow pile around our boots. What do you do? I asked, when the person who raised you is the same one who buried you in debt. Noah exhaled, the sound turning to mist. You dig yourself out, slowly, carefully, and then you show the hole they left behind. I went home and dug through my closet, finding an old leather-bound journal I hadn't used since college. Page 1. Timeline of transactions. Page 2. Voicemails from Brady. Page 3. Photos of the living room, emptied. I built a case, not of law, but of memory. Then I wrote a letter. To Howard. I told him what I'd found, what I knew. Not asking for rescue, but offering the truth he'd once said could save us. Later that night, I stood by the window. Snow covered the world like a clean sheet. The streetlights glowed like beacons, soft and unwavering. I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and started typing an email. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Before I pressed send, I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling, not from the cold, but from the weight of what came next. This email wasn't revenge, it was recognition, that I had seen, survived, and remembered. A part of me still wanted her to reply with remorse, with an explanation that made the betrayal more bearable. But another part, the quieter, wiser part, knew better. I wasn't writing for her. I was writing for the woman I was becoming. I closed the laptop gently, as if sealing a box of memories. Then, slowly, I walked to the kitchen. The bills were still stacked by the fridge. I pulled them closer, sorted them into piles, not to pay, not yet, but to name. Utilities, insurance, ghosts. Outside, the wind picked up. I stepped onto the balcony, pulling the journal close to my chest. The sky was the color of steel, and every branch below was iced in silver. For a second, I saw myself reflected in the glass door. Older, maybe, but clearer. Snowflakes landed on my eyelashes, clung to the edge of the journal like tiny confessions. I whispered one last time into the cold, hoping the wind would carry it where it needed to go. I remember everything. To my mother. This is what you really taught me. I used to wonder if they missed me. Now I wonder if I miss who I used to be around them. The late winter sun slid through the blinds and strips, laying pale lines across the hardwood floor. I sat cross-legged on the rug, the fountain pen in my hand, heavier than I remembered. The radio in the kitchen played soft jazz, crackling faintly between notes like the fireplace that used to sit in our childhood living room. I was alone, but it didn't feel hollow. Not today. I opened the first envelope and placed the blank sheets of thick, cream-colored paper beside me. I started with Brady. I didn't begin with blame. I began with a memory. Him riding a red tricycle in circles around the maple tree, me pushing him until my hands blistered. I told him I remembered how he once told a bully to back off when I cried on the school bus. I wrote about the photo we took in our Halloween costumes, him as a cowboy, me as a scarecrow, and how that day we felt like a team. Then I wrote, "You asked me to smooth things over, but I was never meant to be the glue. Maybe none of us were." I slipped in a copy of the signed credit form from Mom's loan. Just enough truth to uncloud the picture, not to punish. For Mira, I wrote about the day we spent under the quilt fort in my room, reading from a worn-out copy of Charlotte's Web. How she cried when Charlotte died, and how I'd pretended not to cry too. I told her I hoped she never forgot how brave she was at 5, or how much I loved her then. Still did, in the quiet ways. I ended her letter with, "You grew up learning silence from the loudest voices." But your story isn't finished. Neither is mine. Howard's letter took longer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew too well. I thanked him for the pocket watch and for the stories he told me when I couldn't sleep. I reminded him of the time he fixed my science fair project with rubber bands and toothpicks when no one else noticed it had broken. I told him I knew he tried in his own way. I enclosed the photos Noah brought over. Some of them were ones my mother had cropped me out of. Others still had me, half shadowed, half smiling. I closed the letter with, "Sometimes protecting means telling the truth, even if it breaks someone's heart. I think you knew that. I think you still do." Camilla's letter was the hardest. Not to write, but to write without hate. I wrote only what was true, that I remembered her handwriting on my lunchbox notes until 5th grade when they stopped. That I knew she had dreams she gave up, and that maybe I was one of them. I wrote, "You taught me many things. Resilience, caution, and the ability to leave a room without slamming the door. But mostly, you taught me to live with the truth." I didn't include any photos. Just a scan of the insurance form in my name with her bank account listed underneath. When all the letters were sealed, I stacked them beside the window and stared at the snow. It had begun to melt, slow and silent, revealing patches of dull grass beneath. It felt honest. Not beautiful, not ugly, just real. Noah arrived just as I finished washing the ink off my hands. He didn't say anything at first, just placed the old photo album on the table and opened it to a picture of our family at the lake. My face was turned, mid-laugh, my hands wet from skipping stones. Camilla's arm was around my shoulder, her smile tight. Brady and Mira were running in the background, blurred by motion. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We sat there flipping pages, some photos creased, others pristine. One had me holding a birthday cake I hadn't asked for. Another showed a picnic I barely remembered. Noah looked over and said, "You look different in these." "I was trying to be what they needed," I replied. He nodded. "And now?" "I'm just being." Howard called that evening. I let it ring twice before picking up. His voice cracked. "I failed to protect you, but I see you now." I didn't say anything. My fingers traced the edge of the album, where the cover had begun to fray. A single tear fell, darkening the cardboard slightly. I wiped it away, leaving only a faint mark, something you'd miss unless you looked closely. Later that night, I took the old family photo, the one we'd all been in before things fell apart, and hung it near the hallway mirror. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to remember who I had been and what I had survived. What they erased won't erase me. I stepped to the window, the snow almost gone. The world outside was quiet, but not empty. I opened the latch, let in the cold, and breathed. Sometimes I still wonder what it might have felt like to grow up in a family where love wasn't conditional, where silence didn't mean survival. But looking back now, I've learned that the truth doesn't always heal. It humbles. And in that humility, I finally found peace. Family, I've come to believe, is not just who shares your name, but who sees you, even when the lights go out. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to follow more stories like mine, consider subscribing. Thank you for listening. Until next time.